Thankfully, that's out of
Where,
the way now.
where are you based out of again?
We're at Kentucky. Well, it's kind of where we're in a tri-state area. So me
Yeah.
and Chris is both from Kentucky. Mike's from West Virginia, but we're only about 10 minutes away from one another.
Yeah.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
it's a tri-state area. So it's like Ohio, Kentucky, West Virginia meet.
And that you guys do get a lot of snow in that area, right?
Oh
Uh
yeah.
yeah, it depends on the year. We've had
It-
some really big snows and not so big snows.
Yeah.
right.
But it
No,
also seems like in the last few weeks, like every week, there's like a huge storm system that just moves right across the country. It starts in California, hits the Midwest, and it's like by the end of the week, the Northeast is getting crushed.
I
Like,
know.
like either
yeah.
tons of wind and rain or snow or something.
We're in one of those
Yes.
positions where one day it'll be like negative 15 degrees, and then the next day it'll be 65.
Yeah. So the way you dress in our area, you wear a winter coat in the morning, and then in the evening you wear shorts and a t-shirt. So
That's exactly how it
you,
is,
you,
honestly.
you just never know.
Yeah, yeah. I hate that. I need something. I need consistency. I need to know, how I'm going to dress for the entire day, not fluctuations. So
Yeah,
Yeah,
stuff
don't
for
come
kids
down
too.
here,
You
though.
never know how to dress kid when the weather's fluctuating like
Oh
that.
yeah. Yeah, man. Well, Stephen, I just want to first start off with just saying, man, thanks for joining us, man. It's an honor. It really is.
Yeah, no, thanks. I appreciate it. No, I always love talking Hell House, talking horror with online. So anytime I get a chance to, I love jumping on and doing this.
Cool.
Well, we all three definitely appreciate your time. We really do. So just a extended thank you.
No, yeah, thanks, and thanks for all the kind words and everything about everything you said about Hell House. I appreciate that. I gotta ask, what Tyler, what are you watching in the background there? You got a movie on, or is it just like a
No,
background thing?
that's my Apple TV. So
Oh,
it
just you got
literally
the generic background that feeds. Yeah, yeah.
it's like my nightlight. It never gets turned off at all. It
I
just
love
keeps
it.
going.
I love all the backgrounds that Apple TV generates. It's cool.
I know, yeah. I always like stare at them. I'm like, is this animated or is it real? Because it looks
Right.
so well done that it
Yeah.
almost seems real sometimes.
It's the dolphin one that always gets me. I can't. It doesn't look.
Exactly.
Real. Yeah.
I know. And sometimes they sneak a new one in there too. So it's just like,
Yeah.
wait, I've never seen this one before. So I gotta watch it now. Oscar worthy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Um,
All right. Well, Stephen, our lead in is going to be Chris. So he's just going to kind of like introduce you, give an introduction, and we'll go ahead and just kick it off. All right.
Yeah. Sounds
We
good.
should be like maybe like an hour if that's all right.
Yeah, that works.
Okay, cool. Awesome. All right. Well, I think we're recording. So we're good to go, Chris.
I wanted to welcome everybody to a very special episode of Fright Fights podcast, because we have somebody with us today who has scared the living shit out of us with one of the most terrifying clowns in horror history. And we are talking about Stephen Cognetti, the director of Hell House LLC. Welcome to the show, Stephen.
Hey, thanks for having me, guys.
it's an honor, man. It really is. I guess I'll start off with the first question, Stephen, if you don't care. And I just want to start with the basics. Stephen, kind of tell us your story. What started filmmaking for you, and what really got your interest?
Good question. I've ever since I was a little kid, I wanted to make movies. It's a very tough field to break into. So, I went to school for it. Temple University. I graduated from in Philadelphia. I did their film program, and it's not one of those careers where you can just go to school for it and then get entry level directing jobs. It's just, it's very it's just a crazy field to get it. It's tough, and you got to find your own path and do whatever you can to get into it. I decided my way of making films was going to be through horror, even though. When I was in film school, I never thought I was going to make horror films. I always enjoyed the genre, but I found out that horror is just a good path for young filmmakers to get into, because you don't need a lot of money to make a good horror film. You just need some good scares, and it's just like in different genres, comedy, drama. You need a lot of money because you need nameless actors and A-list actors and just names. And you just need a lot of things that you don't need on the horror side. And you see that all the time. There's so many success stories of indie horror films finding
Yep.
audiences. And that's the toughest thing with independent filmmaking is just finding an audience. And I think it's a lot easier in the horror genre because horror fans are just like the best fans. It's like, everyone, we have our horror family. We all love horror films. We talk about them, we debate them. And just being in that and making movies within that genre, it's been awesome. And I think it's just a good route and how to break into filmmaking because just the audience is there, die hard, best audience there is.
Yeah, you definitely broke into it with Hell House. I mean, that movie is one of the most terrifying films that I've seen in a very, very long time. Grown men are scared of this movie, so that's an accomplishment right there.
I appreciate
I'm one of them. I'm one of them.
I think it's the realism of it, and that's I think the documentary route added to the realism. And I always say that the more real any scare feels, the more terrifying that scare is. And that's why I think found footage, people love them, because I think found footage is it doesn't feel like a movie. It feels like something real. And so I think that just adds another element to a scare. And that's why it's terrifying. I like, Blair Witch is utterly terrifying, and not really much happens in Blair Witch when you think about it, but it's just so terrifying because they scare you with the unknown, and it just feels so real. I say the same thing about my favorites. One of the movies that inspired Hell House was Lake Mungo. I'm such a big fan of that movie, and it just feels like such a real documentary. And they don't do a lot. You don't need to do a lot. When you just make an eerie situation feel so real, that's enough. And I think that's a great subgenre. That's why found footage is so well received.
Yeah.
Well, I just have to commend you. Oh, go ahead, Chris. I'm sorry.
I was just going to say, sometimes what you don't see is usually the most terrifying thing because your mind is the more creative part. Exactly, so it's what you're picturing. Yeah.
Yep. Fear of the unknown.
Really quick, I really have to commend you when you said found footage, because personally for me, watching Hell House, all three, but watching the original, I felt like I was there. I felt like I was holding the camera and I was in place. I was there. I felt it. And what you really executed very well was like the subtle scares. It's not about the jump out, the most terrifying, but it was the bothering, with the clown head move or just little bits and pieces. You executed that very well, the subtle scares. And I really have to commend you on that. And just the whole point of just making the audience felt like they were living the movie. And I thought you did it very well.
Oh, thank you. Thanks for saying that. And it's my favorite kind of scare is the subtle scare. I don't like the scares that hit you over the head. I try to stay away from them when I can. I think we did end up doing a few of those in 2 and 3 though, but 1 is really like everything I love about horror in one movie, and it's just the creepy things that happen in the background. And I would say one of my favorite moments in more recent horror is the movie The Strangers with Liv Tyler, and I just love that moment where she's on the phone and you just see that the thing that was outside is in the house with her. Just you get that quick peek in the background of it. Doesn't do anything. It's just standing there, and it's so terrifying and effective. And I love that.
Yes.
Kind of
Oh yeah, that was probably one of the most terrifying moments in modern film history I can remember. Is whenever you see that.
It's so good. I love it, and it's just, and that's the kind of scare that always was inspiring me through every draft of Hell House, was to keep things subtle. And I also think that also keeps things believable a little bit, and also adds a little bit. That's just the best kind of scare there is, the subtle scares.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I guess I would ask kind of like, obviously the state of horror in terms of found footage, it continues to kind of evolve. So we start out with, back in the 70s, kind of like more of a mockumentary style, which is kind of like what Hell House is. And then it kind of goes into more like the Blair Witch. And then we see, Hell House come out, and it continues to redesign and re-evolve that entire subgenre. So whenever you look at that, was there ever a time, I don't know if like Hell House was always in your head, you always wanted to make it, Or was there ever a time that you was like, now is the time it is appropriate to make Hell House? Now it was always like designed to be like a found footage of that kind of like style.
No, it wasn't. It was I wrote it to be a narrative, just a traditional narrative story, like it was a group of people put on a haunted house where things go wrong, and every draft of the script it just evolved as I write, and until at one point I just realized I love the angle more of like doing, and I always described it as like 60 minutes Dateline, an episode where instead of investigating, some guy murdered his wife, let's talk about like ghosts. Like, what if it's like, Dateline meets a good ghost story, and we try to figure out that mystery that way. And then that's when that idea started kicking off. And then when I saw Lake Mungo, I realized that you could make a scary movie through the fake doc lens, and so I went about trying to evolve the story around the doc Dateline sit down interview, replaying footage angle, and I love that angle more. And so the subsequent drafts of the script were all from that vantage point, putting away the old elements of the story where it was going to be just a traditional narrative. And I found the story just flowed so much better. And then I just kept on going that way with it. And I just feel like, just like, doing found footage saves you in a lot. Like, we're able to do it on a budget because it's found footage, but also it just served the story better doing it that way anyway. So, so no, it wasn't like always in my head to do a found footage and the time is right. It just takes ideas for me, just take a while to evolve. They start off as seeds, and after a while, you write drafts. You hate the drafts. You don't go back to those drafts for a couple months, and you come back to them again, and something else clicks. And it's a lot of subway drives back and forth up on down the A train in New York. A lot of light bulbs clicking to get that draft that we shot for Hell House.
Yeah. So
Well-
one of the main factors in the film is the Abaddon Hotel itself. It's one of the main characters of the movie. So how did you go about finding such a creepy and unique location?
So that's another thing that evolved. It was originally a haunted house. The haunted house was in an actual house, and an abandoned house, not an abandoned hotel. And one of the things that clicked early on with the story was I was driving out in New Jersey, outside of Manhattan, and I was driving through Rockland County, and I found this really cool abandoned house. And some abandoned structures always inspire me, story-wise. You just think of like something that happened in there, what happened in there. And I took a picture of this house. It's actually on my Twitter feed. My pin tweet is the house, the abandoned house, and that just like started the story. It's a group out of Manhattan. They move out to Rockland County for some reason to put on their haunted house. But then I realized that an abandoned house wasn't really going to be ideal shooting conditions. So I started looking out to real haunted houses, Halloween haunted house attractions, and reaching out to them and saying, like, can we shoot there? And I found this place called the Waldorf Estate of Fear. It's in Pennsylvania. And it's about an hour and a half outside of New York City. And I met the owner, Angie Moyer, and she's just the best person that I could have teamed up with for this job, because she lives and breathes horror films and everything horror. And she created this haunt out of this old hotel. And when I toured it, I showed her the script, and she and I just walked through the house, and we were just like, we could do scenes here. We do the scene 28 can take place here. This could be Paul's room, and it just fit perfectly. So it's just got lucky that I met up with Angie, because I think she brought a lot to the film. And she was our production designer, and as well on the film too. So she played just an integral role in finding her was very good. And it's a cool place to film. It's the place is a maze. It's claustrophobic. It's everything you want in a horror location. It's a lot of fun to shoot in.
Yeah, I don't know if I'd ever have the guts to go into it after watching the movie. It's you made it seem so scary.
Yeah, it's it's something we did, like that's one thing, like we would talk about when we were filming the first one. Someone would ask the question, like ask one of, like, was an actor or something like that. It's like 10 o'clock at night, we're leaving, go back to our hotels after a day shooting. The hotel is dark and quiet and nobody's there, no lights are on. He was like, would you go down to the basement? Like, could we dare you to go down to the basement right now on your own? And nobody would want to do it though. But I wrote that idea into Hell House 3. One of them asking the actor to do that, and they do go down to the clown. And so it's just like a real gag we played on each other while making Hell House 1. I wrote as a real scare in Hell House 3.
Speaking of that, did you have the intention of being a trilogy? Like you said, like you mentioned the third one, like, betting somebody to go down. So just brings me to my next question. Did you have, from the beginning to now, did you see this growing as it is now?
I didn't. I knew that it could be, because when I said I wrote the first draft of the script and it was a narrative, traditional narrative and not a found footage, it had a lot more story and a lot more background and had a lot of elements that you lose when you go found footage. So when I changed it to found footage, I lost a lot of those elements, and I always knew those elements were there. And I always would joke to people as we're making one. People are like, why is this and this? And I'd be like, oh, don't worry, I'll explain that in the sequel. Joking, never thinking I would make a sequel. And then I eventually was fortunate enough to actually come back and try to flesh out more of the story that had always been there, with 2 and 3 and so on. So there was always like this bigger world behind the original movie that was always there. Only because the story got cut down so much and you can't explain. There's a lot of exposition stuff you can't do in found footage that you can in narrative. It just happened that I was like, oh, I think I can tell more of this story that I cut out in the subsequent 2 and 3. But it was never like the original intention. It just happened because the story was there.
Gotcha.
Did anything change with so you mentioned how it was a narrative story before and it went to found footage? Was there any specific moments in the script that was completely changed for that, since like the filming style did change?
A few things changed. The opening scene with the tour gone wrong, that was one of the biggest things that I added to the newest version, was having that incident that we try to go back and unravel. The way it was narratively, it was just this group goes to this haunted house in a very linear fashion, just telling the story. They get there, things start happening to them. They decide, should we put it on or not? But then I decided, if you do a documentary style, I can add this whole opening where something goes wrong and show what goes wrong, and kind of leave it a mystery, like, well, what went wrong? We don't know like something happened on this opening night, and show it that way, and then go back and try to tell the story through found footage. And so I think that was the biggest change. I think for the better, when the script evolved, I think a lot of other story elements evolved, including that, like how do we open the film? And I think that made it a better opening. I love the idea of being introduced to a mystery and then spending an incident that you don't know anything about. Something happens, it's crazy, and you spend the rest of the film kind of going back behind the scenes and figuring out, why did X, Y, and Z happen? Why did we see what we saw? And that was one of the biggest changes. Most of the scares were always there from the original. I always say the one of the things, that first scare that popped in my mind when I had the idea for Hell House was the clown at the bottom of the steps when they wake up in the middle of the night and walk down, see it. That was always there. I always wanted that clown to be moved around the house and them finding it and just having to slowly approach it in the middle of the night in the dark. That scare was always there. A lot of a strobe light scare was always there. That it just like. So the scares really didn't evolve too much. They just kind of changed. I guess the context changed a little bit, when they happened, who they happened to. But the scares were there. It's just kind of the story, the bigger story around it changed a lot. But I was always so excited to film that clown gag at the bottom, because that was like one of the first scares I thought of, like, ever in my life, because it's the first horror movie I wrote. So it's like, I just wanted to film. And I'm so glad it came out well, and a lot of people love the clown stuff, because and I'm just so happy that worked out. And I just wanted to keep all that clown stuff very subtle, and our clown worked out well. And that was a tough thing, getting the clown, because it was just tough to find, get the right one, because every clown mask you see or anything, everything's overly exaggerated to, like, the red noses and all this stuff, and I wanted something so basic and simple. And So it took a lot to get what we finally landed on, but with the clown we landed on worked well, I think.
Mhm.
Oh yeah. I have to say though, what you said, keeping it subtle. One moment in your first movie, the strobe light scene where they're kind of doing the walk through the haunted house.
Mhm.
Man, all right. So I was watching this movie by myself downstairs in my living room with the lights out the very first time, and when I seen that scene, the strobe light, and I still kind of get goosebumps, kind of looking over my shoulder in a way, but the strobe lights, and it's going in and out, and then all of a sudden you see, these figures in the middle of the walkway, and then you don't.
Yeah,
dude. Awesome job. I mean, awesome freaking job, because still to this day, that is the highlight. What kind of, it terrifies me, because that could happen. You're walking in. Did I just see something? What was that? The clown, absolutely, hands down, amazing. But the strobe light scene, I mean, genius mind on that.
thank you.
I got it. Absolutely amazing.
Yeah, I didn't know how that was going to turn
today.
out. I mean, yeah, I didn't know how that was going to turn out. It was a lot of tricky. It's a lot of tricky editing though, because the camera we're filming on doesn't really pick up the strobe too well. Like, it's a whole frame rate thing, and some of the frames were like cut out. It was a technical thing that I didn't really understand going into it when we shot it. But in post, I was really like, I'm like, this is going to be a tough cut, because you had to select certain frames. So when it did light up, I would steal certain frames and bring them in, or extend it. Like, the frame would only be the flashlight would only be a frame long, and I would extend it to like maybe 3 frames, just so you get the impact more a little bit. But it was a tricky edit. I'm glad it worked out, because that was another one of the original scares that I wrote. And it's just a cool thing, because every haunted house has a strobe light, so you need something to happen. It's like, what would be a haunted house scary movie without a strobe light scene? And it's so thank you for saying that. I appreciate it.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
And the scene, what we did with Paul, Gore Abrams, when he runs out of that room and jumps over the bar and he throws up, he really threw up. So.
Oh wow, did not know that.
Yeah, he threw up. That's authentic. That's authentic vomit you see there on camera. But he was struggling though, because he was severely hungover. He was out drinking the night before. The cast had a great time. That's the thing about the cast, and why a lot of people think the cast was so well. They did such a great job, and they meshed on camera, because they meshed off camera too. They've become lifelong friends. They still keep in touch, and some of them still work together on other projects, and the 5 of them were great. They all got along so well on set, always hanging out, and sometimes they hung out offset too much, and and as evidenced by Paul having to do. He only had to do like a few takes of jumping over that bar, but the last one sent him over the edge and he threw up. So
that's great. That's a good fun insider there.
Yeah.
How did you assemble the cast? Was it kind of just like did it all fall into place for you, or did you have to like audition a bunch of people?
We auditioned a lot of people. Yeah. It was just a few days of bringing people in. We rented a space. And actually, we my wife was working at Lincoln Center at the time, and she got us this room, a studio at Lincoln Center, just finagling it on a weekend. Nobody's there, and so her boss let us use it. And so when we were sending out audition notices to people, like, hey, come to Lincoln Center and audition, people thought we were like, we must be legit, like we must be a big production if the auditions are at Lincoln Center. But we weren't. We were just it's no name indie low budget project though. But it got people to come out. We had to see a lot of people we were bringing in for certain roles. We didn't like, but then move them around, like Alex, Danny. He first came in for Paul, and he wasn't good for Paul. And then after we've auditioned so many Pauls, and we finally landed on Gore, and I loved Gore from the beginning. He was just such a good actor. But I realized, like, there's nothing wrong with Danny's acting. It's just that he was just auditioning for the wrong part. So then I brought him in for Alex, and when we just had him do an improv scene. Just an improv scene. Tell me why you love putting on haunted houses, and he just went on this improv just dialogue about what he loves about scaring people and making haunted houses. And it was like, I'm like, oh, this is Alex, and it worked out so well. But it was a long process, casting process, but it worked out. And you do a lot of you see enough people, you'll find the right people. We don't have casting people or anything, casting departments. It's just us. So it's a process, I always say. But if we just see enough people, we'll eventually land on the right people. And it's long and tedious, but it worked out.
How long did it take for you to cast your members and film Hell House? And just was it a few weeks, a month, or how long did it take?
We filmed in May of 2014, and I think I started the audition process in January. So from the first auditions to when we got to set for the first day of filming, that's like 5 months. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and that's just a lot of prep we did. The script was written. By the time I started casting, the script was locked, and we were ready to go. And then I locked the script sometime in 2013, and I said, like, right after the holiday, I'm just going to get this film going. Just stop delaying. Just the script's locked. It's good. Let's start casting, get the cast, and make the damn film. And so I just started telling that to everybody who was already involved in the film. I'm like, we're making this. It's going to be May. So it's just a lot of trips back and forth out to Angie and making sure she's right in her end, and she was. Getting the cast together, getting and finalizing the crew, and we worked with a great crew. Brian Harnick was our DP. Alex, our makeup artist, she was amazing. The sound people from everybody was just like, some people were very new to their positions, but excelled at them. Like, I've never done this before, but I never was a production manager before, but I'll try it. And we're like, all right, we'll see how this goes. And everyone did a great job. So and everyone had a fun time too. It was a fun shoot. Everyone, wasn't grueling or anything like that. It was it was a fun shoot that everyone was happy to be part of.
Well, you mentioned like Angie
Sure.
was your production designer. So whenever it came down to actually creating the haunt itself, and that was an actual haunted house, you said, right? So did she have to make any kind of modifications to what was already existing? Or did you guys use kind of like little pieces of what was already there?
She will use a lot. Obviously, a lot of the set pieces were hers. What the biggest modification she had to do was design. I needed her to design a new route, a route through the hotel that she does it a certain way. I needed to be done a way that like leads us around, finalizes us in the basement, so that could be where the bottleneck and the chaos happens towards the end of the tour. And then everybody tries to run out, and then we get out of the house, we get out of the hotel in a certain area. So she had to like rearrange the route, which means rearranging a lot of her own tour to fit how the blocking of the chaos tour, the tour from hell happens. Because we have to hit these certain points. We have to be in the kitchen, then we have to move to the bar, then we have to be in the basement. But then once we're running out of the basement, we have to be able to get to the back of the hotel and run out to when the fire trucks pull up. So she had to do a lot of that, figuring out how do we get from A to B to C to D, and then to get to E and F after that. So that was the biggest thing she had to do. But while using her own props, I think she did order something special, but not much. And pretty much that was the beauty of like why I wanted to film in an actual haunted house, because most of what we need is already there. Instead of having to design, having to create one from scratch in an abandoned place, I knew that was going to be very tough on a limited budget. So that's why I said let's just take that out of the equation by already having it in place. But we needed a place, a location that can be both a functioning haunted house and also have the look like it could have been abandoned for years too. And that was part of the whole location scouting thing. And that's the thing about the Abaddon Hotel or the Waldorf or Angie is it has both. That looks like a beat down abandoned hotel, but it's also very functioning as a Halloween haunted house. So it was able to do both,
So all three of us here have found the movie years later through streaming services, and we really didn't know much about it at all, didn't really hear anything about it, and we found it and fell in love with it. But what was the initial reaction after the movie was filmed and released, both from fans or of horror genre and financially?
Well, it's I think with we're not unique. I think a lot this happens to a lot of low budget indie films, especially horror, is that they slowly pick up an audience, and nothing happens. I think the only overnight success movies are the ones that have bigger releases, like theatrical or something like that. It's really hard to be an overnight success in any movie when you're straight to VOD with no marketing, no commercial, no advertising or anything like that. So it just has to spread through word of mouth slowly. So, and that's been fun because I kind of feel like I get to relive this release of this film over and over, because it always seems like every year it's found like a new group of horror fans, a bigger group, and it grows. And so I have people that are just finding it for the first time, avid horror fans, and what they didn't know about when it was released in like 2016, 2017.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just it's slow, and I think that's fine. I know that it was always going to be a VOD movie. I know, delusions that it was going to be a theatrical movie though, but I knew it was going to take time to find an audience. But it did. It found an audience, however slow. That's fine. I was a patient person, but it was just good to know that it was just very once it came out and it slowly trickled, people started finding me on Instagram or Twitter and reaching out, say, hey, saw Hell House, loved it. It was just very relieving, because I didn't know everyone was on board for this kind of scare. I knew I was, and I knew that I love this kind of scare. I'm going to put that into Hell House. And then when I started getting a lot of messages from people, it was like, phew, okay, other people like this kind of scare too. So it's like, it's not just me. All right. This resonates with other people. And so it was just like, all right, that's good. Good to know that there's like-minded people out there that just enjoy the subtle stuff, and and don't need everything explained. Although a lot of people complain about a lot of things weren't explained, but it's fine. But financially, it's just, there's not it's a small budget, so it's not a hard to overcome. You're not in a huge hole like you would, like if you have $1 million budget and you're a straight to VOD movie. Your investors are probably never going to see that money again. But when you keep you keep your budgets low, you're usually able to pay everyone back, as long as you're not your budgets aren't exploding. So it was okay. They did. I was able eventually pay everyone back, so they're happy. They didn't. My investors didn't come after me.
They didn't come after you.
Yeah.
That's a good thing. That's a good thing, right?
Yeah. I told them they're going to have to be patient, and they were, which is fine. So.
Nice.
I always tell people, like I always tell other filmmakers, it's a lot easier to ask a lot of people for a little money than a few people for a lot of money, because then if you have to wait years for them to make $1,000 back, it's a lot easier than waiting years to sell someone like that 10,000 you gave me, or that 20,000 or 50,000 you gave me. You're gonna have to wait. It's just keep it small. It's hard to do. It's hard to keep budget small in film. Film is a very expensive thing to do, though. But that's where you got to do things. You got to be very clever, be able to keep your costs down, and then you won't have to. Your investors won't show up outside your place with pitchforks.
That's good. So, with the whole Hell House franchise, rumors have it, and I don't know how much you can talk about it, but are we going to get another rumors Hell House LLC Origins, the Carmichael Manor?
Yeah. The Carmichael Manor is something I've been working on. I'm excited for this because I've always wanted to make the subsequent two I wanted to make, but I was always hamstrung, and I always felt like I was writing with an arm tied behind my back, because we're in the same location, and when I'm trying to scare people in the same location for 3 films, and it's like I wanted to tell a story, but I also wanted to get out of the Evanon Hotel. And I was very happy to have burned the Evanon Hotel down to the ground in the third one, because I was like, now I definitely can't go back. There's nothing, but I didn't know what was going to be next for Hell House, or if there was going to be anything ever for it. But this idea clicked in my head about some of the origin stories that I wanted to pursue, and just like I was saying for the original, just a seed was in my head and just kind of grew and grew over time, where I was like, oh, this is actually a cool story with a lot of good scares, and it's not. I think it's an original story within the world of Hell House. So We're shooting in April, so pretty soon, and it's going to be out on Shudder in I think October. Late September, October is when they're planning for it though. But I'm really excited about this. It's just because it's different than what we're used to with Hell House. So it's just in a new location, new whole new story. And so I think people are gonna really enjoy this one. I like the scares in this. Our location, the actual Carmichael Manor, is awesome. It's a real manor, and it's a manor that it seems its sole purpose was to make a horror movie in. And it's finally getting to live up. This place was built in 1916, and it's taken all those years for it to finally live up to its true why it was built in the first place. So.
Oh, you got me excited for it. I'm ready for it now.
Yeah, it's gonna be good. Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah, and so that'll be in the fall, which will be perfect. And Shudder's been great. We have fun partnering with them putting all the Hell Houses out with Shudder. So it's been great. They're great. They always put out great movies. Their big found footage film they put out, I think it was last year, Host was amazing. So found footage films have a great home with Shudder.
We were actually just talking about Host. That was the ultimate pandemic kind of horror film. It was great. I loved it.
It really was. Yeah. They did such a great job with that. They're very clever at how they were able to do that. The scares were great. I think the scares were great, and it was like a very short movie too.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
And I got to remember that my scripts always run long, and I try to always get them. It's so hard. People always say your script's got to come in around 90 pages. And nobody wants a horror film that goes over 90 minutes. Well, I'm like, well, I don't know what to tell you. Mine's hanging out at 96. You're gonna have to deal with it. All right.
So with Shudder, so you're working with Shudder with the newest Hell House. Do you have any other partnerships with Shudder? You're working on anything else past Hell House in the future?
No, so I do have a film I shot in 2021, the fall of 21, that is still in post-production. It's not Hell House related. It's not found footage. It's a traditional narrative movie. It's just been in post-production for a long time. Also because the film length was very long. And the producers wanted to get it really cut down as close to 90 minutes as they could. And I presented them with a challenge because my original cut was 125 minutes. So obviously I agreed. I said, I know this is very long. I know we're gonna have to cut it down. So it took a while to find the best routes to get it down closer to into the 90s. And then once we did that, our editor did a great job in working with our producers to really get it down to a good scale. And then since then, picture's finally locked, and it's being scored, and the effects are being added right now. It's just I'm not used to a film taking this long and being in post-production this long. I'm used to the Hell House movies where I shoot them and I get them out maybe within a year. And this one's just taking a long time, but it's gonna be worth it. It's called 825 Forest Road. It's just a good old fashioned ghost story, and I'm really excited for this to finally come out. But where it's going to go, I don't know. I mean, it could be Shudder, it could be anywhere. I don't really know. It's really the producers I worked with on this, Epic Level Films production company. I'm sure they're going to be figuring out where to put it, and what's going to be a good home for it. Somewhere digitally or something like that. I don't know if that's going to be Shudder or somewhere else. And that might end up being in the fall too. I don't know. I think it would be great, but I can't say.
Well, I won't say no to two movies at the same time frame coming out together. I'll definitely watch those. So I'm looking forward to that.
Yeah, that's another thing. I don't know. It might be a little too much. That's too much of me. Maybe at one time. Maybe we should spread them out a little bit.
After you press back to back for those.
Right. Yeah. So I don't know. I was just thinking maybe they shouldn't be out on the fence. save that. But I don't know. It's just I've been wanting for this to come out for so long. It's just I just hope it. I think we will be finished up with it by the summer. And so maybe the fall release would be an ambitious timeline, anyways. But I'm just anxious for it to get out. So
did you work with?
Has to come out at over a score Hell House, fine. I just wanted this movie to get out.
Did you get to work with any of like your original cast or crew with this one?
Yes. So my producer Joe Vandelli, he's been working with me on every film. And he is so funny. He always plays a small part as a cameraman in every single film. In all three Hell Houses, he dies as a cameraman. And and in 825, he's a cameraman as well. Just a small role, but he produces every one of my films, and he's a great collaborator in that respect. Though, but he's like, "How am I dying in this one?" And I'm like, "Well, it's probably with a camera. You're probably holding a camera." Vanessa Shepard in Hell House 3 is the lead or the co-lead in 825 as well. She was just a great actress. Every time I casted her in both Hell House 3 and 825, I'm just glad I got you for another film, because sooner or later you're going to be too big to work with me again. And I'm not going to be able to afford you. you're gonna lose my number soon. And she's just such just an amazing actress, and so and then I worked with two other actors, the other leads in the film in 825 that I've never worked with before, and it was just amazing working with them as well. But 825 has a really large cast, so I was just able to work with such a big cast. You're going to see there's just so many characters. And it was fun just every day meeting new actors and being in new scenes and working with such a large group of people. It was just a bigger production than I had been used to, because the Hell House films are 10 days, 11, 12 days shoots, and this one was a 22-day shoot, and it's a fun movie.
Wow, I'm definitely interested, because you said ghost story and large cast. So I think it's going to be a really interesting dynamic. I think it's cool.
It's a cool. The way I wrote the story was that I always describe it as Pulp Fiction as a ghost story. And when I say Pulp Fiction, I mean it in the way the narrative is told in Pulp Fiction, the intertwining storylines where you follow one character and it overlaps with another character, and then we see how that comes back. And so it's just told through the characters, told through the POV of three different characters, and we see those storylines intercross each other throughout the movie and come back and forth. So.
Yeah, that is exciting.
Yeah. So and I think that's probably one of the biggest reasons why it's been in post-production for so long is the edit. Everyone's worried are people going to know this or a different perspective, what perspective we're in, and everything like that. And there's an argument going back and forth. Are we over-explaining it, under-explaining it? So we're trying to meet halfway. And so that was like a long debate, and it pushed the edit, made the edit go long. But I think we found the perfect middle ground, and for what we've locked the picture on. So
nice.
I'm always a fan of under-explaining, not over-explaining things, kind of leaving a lot to the audience to think about. And what I always tell people, if they're thinking about it, that's a good thing. And if people, that means they enjoyed it, and if they're talking about it to someone else, what did you think happened here? Then that's a good thing. And I think when you don't explain things, that generates the conversation, generates the interest, the mystery in your own head, and you try to piece together. And I always say that makes the film rewatchable, because a lot of things that you think are unexplained, they are explained if you watch things carefully and you go back and see things. And that's Hell House too. People ask me questions like, why was this? I was like, well, the answer is there if you really look for it. It's not really actually unexplained. It's just not handed to you on a platter. And so that's the difference. So.
And that's what makes Hell House so good, because you can go back and watch it again, and you can catch things that you missed the first time around.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I love that kind of film. I love catching subtleties that you never caught before.
Nice. Well, we always
try to write a lot of those moments into Hell House, and so yeah, I'm glad that it worked out, and people have picked up on that. So
nice. Well, we always ask our guests kind of like what they've been watching lately, because obviously we're a podcast that always chats about different horror movies we love watching. So, have you checked out anything recently that's really stood out to you?
I am watching all the series that everybody's watching. But no, that's the thing. When I'm right now, I'm in pre-production on Hell House, post-production 825, and also in development on other films. I get into this bubble where I don't want to watch any other horror films when I'm in this crossover bubble, because I'm gonna start getting influences, and then I'm gonna start doing things. And when I watch horror films, it's in a very tight window when I don't have anything going on, when I'm not in the midst of like making things that I don't want to be. I always feel like I might end up like subconsciously taking an influence from something and putting it into my story, and not intentionally. So I always try to just I don't want any outside influences of what's going on in horror. I want to write my own story, and then later on go out and watch all the other movies. But so I'm behind on a lot of great horror movies that I really want to see. Like Smile being one of them, and there's so many other great ones. I'm so excited for the Evil Dead movie to come, the new one coming out soon. I think I'll be in a good place to be able to watch that.
Yeah.
So, but anything I've seen lately? No. I'm watching. I did start the new Jack Ryan on Amazon. I feel like comfortable to watch that. It's not horror, so I don't feel like I'm going to be influenced. Anything out there you guys recommend?
Right. You go ahead, Mike. Go ahead.
No, so I have a daughter that's 10 and a half, and she's kind of gradually showing so much interest in just scary movies, horror movies. Haven't let her watch your films yet, because I don't want to scare her away so where she won't come out of her room.
And Paul drops so many F-bombs. He drops so many F-bombs.
Well, I mean, listen, I love Paul. Absolutely, huge fan of him. And I'll tell you who else I'm a fan of is Mac as the actor, character. Huge fan of Mac. But back to watching. So I've kind of got into watching Wednesday with my daughter. Great. I mean, you have children, correct?
Yes. Yeah.
So I don't know their ages, but I don't know if you're letting them kind of explore into watching things. But I'm a huge fan of Wednesday. Got to check that out if you can squeeze in some time for yourself.
No, that's good to know. I loved everything I've seen about Wednesday so far. Every picture, trailer, every clip, everything. This looks amazing, and I can't wait to dive into that. And my wife is always pushing me like, when are we able to watch? Like, I want to watch Smile. I want to watch this. I'm like, not yet. I need. Like, we got a big list of stuff, and that's definitely on it. That's a good rec.
Nice. Yes, sir.
I would definitely check out. So my biggest surprise from last year, and it's best to go in it blind. So if you haven't watched anything about it, just watch it blind completely. Barbarian. It's absolutely bonkers. It's fun. It's scary. It's
so many people have told me that too. Yeah, I can't wait to see that.
Oh yeah. Everything, Chris?
No.
I got such a good list compiled.
I'd actually recommend something that's on Shudder right now. It's another found footage style movie. I don't know if that kind of blocks you from wanting to see it, but it's called Deadstream. And
I saw Deadstream when it came out in October.
That's great. It's great.
In October. I wanted to bring that up earlier too. I loved Deadstream. I thought that was so well made. I love the main actor, the guy. I think he's so just funny. He was great. I love the way it was shot. I mean, I think that location was amazing that they found to shoot in. Their effects were awesome. All those ghosts were so well done. It's just we were talking earlier about different ways to shoot found footage. I think that's a different way of found footage. All those different cameras they had. I thought it was incredible. I was a huge fan of that movie.
They found a really good way to blend the comedy aspect with the horror aspect, and it worked perfectly.
Yeah. I mean, he should be he should have got an Oscar nod for everything he did. He was a one-man show.
I know. I was so surprised to hear that he basically just did the whole thing himself.
Yeah, yeah, and it's him and his. I think it's him and his sister. I think are the both the filmmakers behind that, and they're both. They seem immensely talented, and I can't wait to see what they do next.
Well, for Hell House 5, there you go. You could just be the main character, the director, the editor.
No,
Awesome.
Listen,
yeah,
if we
it
could
was-
sign a contract right now, we need 12 Hell Houses, and I mean, I'm not joking.
no, this is gonna be fun. I think I'm just excited to get back in the. Ever since we shot the 3 in 2019, and so it's my heart is in this world, and so it was just fun to get back into it, but get back into it in this whole new way. And it's an original way, not. And I just feel like I'm writing Hell House from scratch again, and not just kind of like on top of what's already been done. So I'm excited for this.
Yeah, it sounds like you have a lot of great stuff coming up. So I'm definitely, this is gonna be a big year for you, it sounds like. So I'm gonna have to check out both of them. And yeah, I'm excited.
No,
Yeah,
thank you. Yeah, appreciate that.
We're definitely going to keep our eye on anything that you work on, because you've already caught our attention with the first film that you did. So I mean, imagine, everything else you release, we're going to be there, right there watching it. So
and thank you for just taking a chance on Hell House. I know when you're flipping through Amazon or wherever you see it, and you take a chance in a movie. Thanks for picking Hell House. I know you have a million options out there, and that's the thing. There's an oversaturation of content, so I always appreciate people just take a chance and watch Hell House, and whether they love it or hate it, it's just always just glad you clicked on it.
Yeah. So,
Awesome.
Steven, something we like to do with our guests, if you didn't care to do this, is we would like to have you do an intro for our show, just kind of stating your name, your movie you worked on, and just say like, welcome to, or you're listening to Fright Fights podcast, just real quick, something that we can edit at the beginning of our program.
Say that again. I got to do the intro.
Yeah, so just maybe
it's a lot. There's so much instruction here.
Yeah, I apologize. So just basically state your name and what films you've worked on, real quick, and then just say like you're listening to Fright Fights podcast, and we'll kind of edit that out and we'll put it at the beginning of our program.
Yeah. Do you need my height, my birthday?
No.
Do you need
Just
like
your
the
one
sexy
time.
radio
That's it.
voice?
Just
And
your
you're
one time.
listening to.
We
However you
would
want to do it.
appreciate as sensual as you want to
Steven,
make
while you're
it.
at
It's
it.
fine.
That's it. I don't do
Please lose
sensual. If I try to do sensual, it's just creepy. It's not creepy in a good way. That's.
Lose
Well,
the
now
best
it's gotta
and
be
the shirt.
sensual.
1 second. My wife is calling me. I want to make sure the kids aren't waking up. Kids are definitely awake. Okay. I guess, but it's not my fault though. Okay, that's good. That's all that matters. Cool. Okay. This is Stephen Cognetti live on Zoom. I did Hell House LLC. This is the worst intro you're going to hear ever in your life. And you're listening to. Oh, cut. All right.
We're just gonna keep all that in there. It's hilarious.
This always makes it fun.
It's Fright Fights, right?
Fright Fights,
Yes.
yeah.
Yeah, okay. Can't believe you make the guests do this. All right. I guess this is why I'm behind the camera, not in front of it. especially you give me a script. That's when I get all nervous and you just I'm like, all right, how am I going to say this? And all right. This is Stephen Cognetti. You're listening to Fright Fights.
There you go.
Thank you. That's not good. No.
Steven.
Oh, you know what? Here, I got it again. Okay. Stephen Cognetti, director of Hell House LLC. You're listening to Fright.
No, we're keeping it. We're keeping it. Just
I love it.
You're listening. No, I'm gonna get this right. Fright Fights. Oh, I hate scripts. Oh, now I feel so bad for actors. This is Stephen Cognetti, director of Hell House LLC. You're listening to Fright Fights.
I love it.
you will never forget us. You will never forget us.
I can't do it.
No.
We'll piece it together. It's cool.
And you're listening to Poop Fluff. I'm terrible.
I'll just use all
No,
those
no.
together. That'll be fine.
Oh man, you guys are cruel. I'm sorry.
on
It's
a
probably
serious-
it's probably like a really cool thing that every other guest does very well, and then you throw it to me, and I'm like, blah, blah, blah. I
On a
apologize.
serious note, on a serious note, all with all due respect, Stephen, if after the Hell House LLC origins, obviously we respect you as an individual director and as a family man. I would love just the okay to reach back out down the road and get another interview with you after later in the year, if that's okay with you.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. I love to talk again, especially after the film has come out. So especially to see what you guys thought of it. So
Yeah, definitely.
Well, I greatly appreciate that, sir.
all right, guys. No, I appreciate it. Thanks for having me on. And you're listening to Fright Fights.
You got it. Yes.
There
That's
you go.
awesome. That is awesome.
Awesome.
Stephen, thank you so
Thank
much
you.
for joining us. It's been an honor talking to you about not only your films but other horror films as well. Lots of fun, and sorry I tortured you there toward the end, but we definitely appreciate you having on the podcast.
Yeah, no, appreciate it, guys. Sorry for mumbling that, but no, loved it. Had a great time.
Awesome.
Thank you, sir.
Appreciate
All right.
you.
Take care, guys.
You have a good one.
See you.
See you.